All right, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Devy Dose podcast. I am your host, Eric, at EK Baller on Twitter. And today I have two awesome guests on with me, two of my good friends from the Dynasty Devy space. We got Jake, aka Devy Jake. Tell the people who you are.
Hey guys, I am Jake. As Eric just said, you can find me at Devy Jake. I'm part of the understudy program with the Undroppables, and you can find my work over there.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate being on. And also the one and only Sofa Scout, my friend Jeff.
Yeah, it's good to get on a podcast finally with you, Eric. You can find me, as you said, at the Sofa Scout on Twitter, but pretty much everything, you can hear me every week over talking with Paul Perticchese on Saturday to Sunday podcast, as well as, a lot of my work's in the notebooks, or, every now and then I get an article down onto Dynasty Nerds, but you'll see me around there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend. And with that, guys, let's jump into it. What was your favorite game of the week? You want to start us off, Jake?
There wasn't a ton of great games this week, in my opinion. My favorite was probably the fact that Utah State was able to pull off the upset against Air Force, winning 34-27. It was awesome seeing another big game from Brian Cobbs, have him on a number of fantasy teams, and just surprised that a team who had looked so hapless to start out the year was able to put together a win against a pretty decent 4-1 Air Force team.
Nice. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think I was first into the show sheet. There's usually only a couple like pretty standout games, and I picked the TCU Kansas game. Obviously two ranked teams. We've got some good players on both sides of the ball, right? Primarily, I've been waiting all season for Quentin Johnston to like actually do something in a rep. Like it's like 40 yards was like his highest season high so far.
Right.
And I love him as a talent. I love his profile, and I don't know if it was TCU not using him, like they used some quarterback meshing issues, and like they had a concentrated effort to get him in this game. Like there was like 3-4 screens, like pop pass, like schemed him into it. And like, he's there delivering like 200 yards and a game, like an amazing game winning touchdown in the last minute of the fourth quarter to finish the game 38-31 in what was like a really good back and forth game.
Yeah. A lot of fun. Real quick, where are you guys at on QJ now for the draft?
I still like him as, definitely day 2, hopefully sneaks into day 1. I haven't wavered too much on him as, he profiles out great. He's been productive historically. Yeah, he had a rough start to the season. Like Jeff said, I think 41 was his high coming in. But, he showed that he still got it today, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you there, right? Like, it's too early for me to really start. I kind of look at like where a guy's profile is maybe going slightly up, slightly down. But, for me, I grade him out as to what do I see on the tape? What is on film what jumps out? And he has all the skills in my mind to be a first round pick, but you could say that about, I was saying that about, Jermaine Burton too, who's had an extremely quiet year transferring to Alabama, and all of the X receivers, right? All these kind of outside guys that we've been waiting, we had hyped up and been waiting on, really have kind of just been quiet all year until this massive breakout from Johnston. So, I think he could be a first round pick, but he's going to have to string a few more of these together, I think, before a team's really willing to push all the chips in on him.
Yeah, no, that's right. You can't move guys around that much. So it'd be foolish. But I do get worried when guys just completely vanish from the game plans. Like, what was going on? Because usually if you got the alpha, you got the playmaker, you want to get the ball to your best player. So
and so much changes over time, right? Like, I said Burton, right? I thought he could be probably the best receiver in the class. And I have to come off of it now, right? Like there's no way now. And especially when you get other guys like Xavier Hutchinson or like Rashee Rice, like really blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah, so my favorite games, real quick. I had a lot of fun last night watching USC and Washington State. 'Cause I hadn't really watched USC that much, and we all know Caleb Williams is awesome,
Mhm.
but and he's something, you know. He had some throws. There was one touchdown pass in that game where he was just, bootlegging out to the right and then just threw it across his body, a perfect ball placement. I forget who caught it, but I'm just like, man, that's not just an NFL pass. That's a superstar pass right there. So let's roll right into rising stars. He was my first one, Caleb Williams. Not that he's anything new to anyone's show sheets here, but I was just really impressed with him last night. He put away a good team and a solid Washington State defense and outdoing a solid quarterback. So he was my guy. Well, you guys got anything on Williams, or do you want to roll right into your guys?
I mean, I love Caleb Williams. Hard to call him a rising star when he's QB1 for most people right now. But I another good performance. He's been stellar this year and really delivered on the preseason hype, in my opinion, and hasn't missed a step with Lincoln Riley. Full steam ahead on the Caleb Williams train for me. As for who I had, also maybe not a complete unknown, but Tyler Van Dyke at Miami had 497 passing yards. He had 16 attempts more than any other game this season. He really looked solid and like we'd wanted to see from him coming into the year. He hasn't seemed to really gel a whole lot with their new offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis. Or Gattis, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. But it was good seeing some of the old TVD, and hopefully he can string together a few more because I really do like him as a passer and hope possibly to see him transfer out after this year and go to somewhere that kind of can play to more of his strengths.
Yeah. Are you guys both putting that on Gaddis, the lack of production from the first 4 games? I mean, I kind of think you got to.
I am, yeah. I mean, we've seen him perform in the past. I think that it's definitely a completely different game plan to what he was running last year. And yeah, they're not taking shots downfield. They're not opening it up for him at all until last week or yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the player's got to put a little bit on their shoulders, but it certainly is a headwind when your scheme doesn't play to your strengths, right? And that's something that it's an underrated part. I've talked to Sigmund Bloom on our other podcast about it a lot. Like, it's an underrated part of any player development from any level, right? All the way up into the pros too, is what that environment around them is like. And so, we see it with Justin Fields, right? We'll see how it goes. But, I think Jake's right there is that there's definitely something that doesn't fit well, like some friction. Hopefully we see stuff like this that overcomes it, especially if they've really got to light up the scoreboard. But until then, maybe it's just going to be, an interesting story for him to the draft. My guy was Caleb Williams too. He's probably the top guy there, but we've seen those types of guys fall off, right? And so I'm always impressed when a player ticks boxes off, right? So you mentioned that one throw. I also saw one right into the hole on the sideline that was just this beautiful thrown, laser, right? And so you're oh, tick, arm strength, just putting more reps on tape. So mine was JJ McCarthy. And, I had an interesting conversation with Paul last week on him, but, being out of Michigan, I'm not going to expect big games like this, but, 300 yards this past weekend, 3 touchdowns, 36 pass attempts seems like an anomaly for what Harbaugh wants to do. But, if this is, again, one of those things where he's too good and you just got to keep the ball in his hands, right? So he's one whose stock is clearly on the rise this year for me. And last week's performance was, really his high watermark of the year, really by a long shot. So for me, JJ McCarthy has a ton of my eyes on him at least.
Yeah, I I'm real into JJ at this point too. I did a film study on him a couple of games ago, and without looking at the numbers, it seems like they're letting him throw it more than they have in the past. And I think, it kind of makes sense, right? You have an NFL caliber quarterback, but I do really think highly of him. I think his pocket presence for young guys has been great. Just moves around well, like nice touch. Like in the game that I studied, he needed to hit more of his deep shots, was missing some wide open guys, but man, I thought there's a lot to like. You got anything else, Jake? Or
no, one other name I would mention is Drake May. He may not have had the best week. He had 2 interceptions. He'd only thrown 1 all season before that, but his season so far has just been tremendous. He's making all the throws. He's getting, groundwork as well. He's got 66 rushes for over 300 yards, 21-3 touchdown interception ratio. He's got the second best QBR in the nation. Drake May wheels up on that one as well.
Yeah, that QB class is looking nice. I was talking to some guys about it earlier this morning, but there's 5 guys that I think I take over anyone except the top 2 guys in this class. So let's shoot running backs, guys. Jeff, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, sure. So, my kind of riser here, if, especially looking towards the, Devy C2C leagues is Branson Robinson, who, I think I didn't catch if there was like an injury there to Milton or whatnot, but, but he came out, had a really productive day for Georgia on the ground. Whether that was mop up duty, but you love to see it from a freshman, 12 for 98 and 1. So he's kind of my riser there, because I don't expect this to kind of turn into a Quinshon Judkins kind of scenario, but hey, those always start somewhere.
Yeah, I think Milton was a groin or something. There was a ding. I saw something about it. But yeah, I mean, the second coming of Nick Chubb, someone said, and it's not.
He looked like a 30-year-old man coming out of high school. He's got the profile coming in that few others do, and to see him, delivering on it is awesome.
Yeah. How about your guy, Jake?
Izzy, Pittsburgh's Israel Abanikanda. He broke Tony Dorsett's single game rushing record with 320 rushing yards on 30 carries with a whopping 6 touchdowns. I had him trending down throughout the offseason and even the beginning of this year. It seemed like Hammond had largely outplayed him, but since Hammond's gone down, Izzy's been great, and this, the best single game rushing performance in Pitt history. Hard to argue with that.
Yeah, you can't ignore that kind of just overwhelming performance from the guy. And I was kind of off of him too. Hammond just looked better in those first games until he got hurt. But man, that is a hell of a game, So I guess my guy here, he's not a new name for us, but Zach Charbonnet from UCLA has just been stringing together good games. Last year, he had a couple breakout performances, but had really just been consistent this year. And I think that has a lot to do with them having a little bit more of a well-rounded offense around him, having some things going in the passing game. But, third consecutive 100-yard game, fourth 100-yard game of the season. I think in a weaker running back class, we would definitely be locking Charbonnet into day 2 easily. It might be questionable this year just because it's looking like such a loaded bunch, right? Like some of these guys are going to have to slip into the 4th or the 5th round. Is that going to be Charbonnet? I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a day 2 talent to me, but it's going to be an interesting draft for sure. You guys got anything else on Charbonnet or on?
Yeah, I mean, going up against Utah, I mean, that's a great defense, right? So 200 yards on a great defense is really one of those feather in the cap kind of performances. But I think he hasn't done enough for me to like kind of move off my summer position on him, where I still question some of those measurables. Are they enough to really stand out, like you said, in a good class? And I think I think UCLA is setting them up really well for success, right? And that's what we're seeing. And I just, I think that's one of those ones that could come in and kind of shock some people where maybe he's not going as high as some would think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. All right, let's talk wide receivers. I think you kind of already said a lot of what's to be said about Quentin, right?
Sorry, Jake. I didn't see that.
Got anything else on him? Or
you blitzed me, man. You blitzed me.
I didn't see that one. I'm sorry.
Hell of a game for a hell of a talent, right? Did he have any color to add to that, Jake? Or?
No, Jeff did way better job than I was going to do. So
well,
kudos to you, Jeff.
What is it that like has Quentin Johnston for you is like one of the top profiles? Like, what is it about him and his game that you really, really like?
I think that he's a good route runner. He seems athletic. He's got it all to me. He's got the good production profile. He's produced from an early age. He's efficient. My biggest complaint this year has just been them not getting him involved. I haven't watched too many TCU games where I haven't seen if it's him not getting open or them not throwing him the ball, but it seems like for whatever reason they just haven't been throwing him the ball, and it was nice to see such a sea change from them. 14 catches compared to a high of 5 is certainly a different tune and something that relieved to see. You had mentioned, the Jermaine Burton certainly having a ton of skills. He never had the production profile that QJ had, so he suffers a lot more from not producing in Alabama the way we kind of saw Jameson Williams and the way that we kind of wanted him to. QJ already has a good resume, in my opinion, and he can weather the storm of a few bad games without it completely derailing his profile.
Yeah, and I mean, what we saw this week was just, when they schemed him into it, some massive yards after the catch production. Like he looked like a beast out there, just trying to chuck people and run through them. So, I mean, I think like that's just it sort of rounds out the profile pretty well from what I thought had like a lot of physical tools and good route running too.
Yeah, I got to watch a lot more of his film still, and the highlights are high for sure. But like I said, I get suspicious when guys disappear from the game plan. I do like to make a lot of my decisions on data. And,
yeah,
I mean his production profile from this year will get helped by this, but before this, it was lacking for someone that I want to be taking in the top 20 picks of a rookie draft. Jeff, to talk about my man.
Oh yeah, dude. So, I mean, whenever it's just welcome to the spotlight because everyone knows Evan Stewart, extremely high recruit, but Anaya Smith went down 2 weeks ago, right? And you saw A-Chain kind of get in there a little bit in the passing game last week, but this is the week that Stewart stepped up and against they were playing Alabama this weekend, right? I mean, hey, that's he was like 8 catches, 100 yards. Like that's a good day's work right there. And so I'm hopeful that Smith is out for the season now. So let's see if Stewart can carry the banner from a true freshman year, because that, as Jake was talking about, early production profiles, like that would put him on a trajectory to be like early day one pick if he can just kind of build that resume up over and over and over again.
Yeah, and he's been involved too. I mean, this was his biggest game, but he's really been involved since the very beginning of the year. And I do have some data up here too. I'm not going to hijack it, but he already had before this game, because my data that I'm looking at is a couple of weeks old. He had a 22% reception market share. He had 1.47, yards per team pass attempt, like some really good numbers for a freshman in the first half of his first season. So a lot to like about Stewart. And obviously, his high school film was phenomenal. And I think we're seeing that in college already too. You got anything else on him, Jake? Or
no, you guys have covered it. The only thing you haven't mentioned is, it's a freshman in a Jimbo offense who's actually producing. So even more of an accomplishment considering the lack of freshman production that we've seen in those systems.
Yeah, you definitely got a discount on him in freshman drafts too because of the Jimbo thing, right? But if you could get him at the end of the first round, I think it was a coup. My guy, I didn't have anyone I really loved, but I thought it was worth shouting out Jonathan Mingo for his 247-2 line against Vanderbilt. It's Vanderbilt, so let's not get too excited. But the only reason I really thought it was worth talking about is because they did seem to open up the playbook a little bit and let Jackson Dart throw the ball a little bit this week. And the kid looked okay too. He looked okay last week, looked okay this week. And, it might be interesting to invest in a pass catcher in that offense if they start throwing the ball. To date this season, you did not want anything to do with any wide receiver from Ole Miss in that offense. But I wonder if things are going to change or if it was just an off week. And I guess we'll see. So let's roll into the main course here, and I will throw up I figure out how to share my screen here. Zen, share screen. Screen 2. There we go. We want to look at this. So we did a little bit of ranking of the three of us today, and I thought it'd be pretty fun to talk about it here today. So we were unanimous on our top prospect from the freshman class, from the 2025 draft class. It's what these rankings would be. That was the assignment to my two friends here. It was let's rank the freshmen, top 10 freshmen in college football. Unanimously, Nicholas Singleton, number 1. Anyone want to say some words on Singleton real quick?
Not much to say. He's, been great. Lived up to the hype. Excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean, Jake said it with Branson, right? Just built different, and from day one, just massively running with the ball. So,
yeah, I mean, are you guys seeing shades of him being like generational running back, or too early to say anything sweeping like that?
If you're using generational to mean like once every 20 years, then absolutely not. But he looks like the best running back in the class by far, and he looks, like the top 3 or 4 running back overall. I would still put him behind Tavion and Bijan for sure. But he'd be right there in the discussion for RB3 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can go generational when you've got, like you just mentioned, those 2 names before. I think Braylon Allen comes in there, and we're going to talk about some other great names here. So, that type of moniker, I can't go out on a limb as freshman to really like crown someone like that. I mean, I think there's been like 1 or 2 players in my lifetime, and I can think of it almost more on the NBA side of things, and that's like Kobe and LeBron. Right, like when they're coming out at that age and just being that dominant, right? And they went straight into the NBA, right? So like if this was Nick Singleton crushing the NFL, then yeah, I'm all with you. But let's see that resume build up. And the best part is, we've got time for that, right? Like we've got time to like really get juiced up for this guy. It's no rush. There's no rush.
I think in practice on the Twitter streets, generational means like the best guy for 3 years. He was the best guy in college at that moment. It makes a little more sense, and you put it in that light. So 2 out of the 3 of us had Quinshon Judkins as our number 2. Viewers that aren't familiar, he's the running back, freshman running back from Ole Miss, who was locked 2023 running back Zach Evans into near exact timeshare, or even taken more of the work. I think the kid's a stud. What do you guys got?
Yeah, I mean, he was up there for me because, I was the other one who kind of put him at 2, and then I'll let Jake kind of like throw some cold water down on this, all this excitement. But, honestly, for me, it's not he's looked good, right? Like I said, it's kind of hard to crown anybody, off of, just some freshman tape, but he's looked really good. And it's really just the fact that he's like displacing a guy I love in Zach Evans. And I just like, that's credit right there. Like that's why he's at 2 for me is that respect that he can like push Evans off the field.
For me as well. I still have Zach Evans as the top 3 running back in this class, and Quinshon looks every bit as good. But Jake, give us the hate.
It's not hate so much. I'm more just a slow mover with my rankings. Maybe should be more reactionary when it comes to Devy, because Devy is a different beast compared to NFL rankings, where you can maybe afford to be a little bit more static. But as far as the Zach Evans thing, I'd heard a rumor that the reason he went to Ole Miss was because they weren't going to run him to death before the NFL, and he wanted to preserve his legs before going to the NFL. So I wonder if that was ever a conversation that was had, and if that has played into some of the early playing time that Judkins he's definitely earned it, and he's looked great while doing it. And like I said, maybe I'm just a laggard and should bump him up a little bit more. But I'm not using the narrative of him earning a timeshare with Evans to crown him just yet. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll come around.
It's fair. That is fair, my friend. All right, Evan Stewart. I mean, we've talked about Stewart a little bit already. He was the number 1 or number 2 prospect at the wide receiver position in this draft class, depending on what rankings you were looking at. Lean, explosive. I love the kid. I acquired a ton of shares in early drafts. Just really a big fan of his game. I actually liked him more than Burden coming in, and that looked pretty dumb for a little bit, but looks like reasonable, or at least only a little dumb now. Anyone want to talk about Stewart a little more?
We've touched on him already, but yeah, he's fantastic. Hyped to see him producing, hyped to see him doing well, and let's do this thing.
Okay, so Luther Burden, right? For a little bit, the clear top player in the class as we were in preseason. Everyone had anointed him as the next Jamar Chase. And so far, he's not quite lived up to that hype, although has still put some really nice work on film and still been involved and active against SEC defense as the true freshman. But Jake, you had him at number 2 still. Why don't you hit lead off on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I am somewhat of a laggard with my rankings. I don't think that because he hasn't, lit the world on fire that he has shown anything to me that warrants a severe drop. I think he's been great. Even last game against Florida, they still are scheming him the ball. They still are trying to get him involved. They're trying to get him involved all over the field, which to me, is an indicator of what they believe they have in him. It'll be interesting to see if that blip where he had removed Missouri from his social media, but then came out and said he was still all Tigers. What was up with that? Is that
just a rumor?
Was that just a rumor? I didn't verify his social media to see if it had been taken off.
I thought it was scrolling.
Could have been. I am very gullible, so I bit on it. But hopefully he is still all Missouri, and I think he'll grow with Horn, and I'm excited for him. I think he's great, and I've seen exactly what I wanted to see so far, and that's them getting him involved all over the field and him, showing flashes, and he's absolutely done that.
Jeff, you got Burden takes?
I think Jake really summed it up well, so we can kind of hit our next guy there. Yeah.
Well, that means you get to talk about Branson then.
Sweet. Well, I think I mentioned him a little bit earlier, right? It's your coming out party. You did catch some of the news. It sounded like that there was an injury, ahead of him to Milton. You said groin or something like that. So, hey, that's, you got to take advantage of your opportunities. That's what he did. I think like Jake said, you've got to kind of stick with your priors until you get new information. Right. And so for me, and what you'll probably see in my rankings is I'm filtering in new information as the freshmen hit the field. Right. And so, yeah, that probably leads a little bit of whiplash back and forth, as, once others hit the field and break out, those ranks will shuffle a little bit more, but that's it, right? Like he hit the field. He showed me he's got it. Cool. Like tons of 5-star prospects don't pan out, right? And for a lot of reasons, but but I think you're in a good program, right? You're in a program that's like molded these NFL backs, and you've got the profile, and you get the opportunity, you get the production right away, right? Like this wasn't a 12 for 40 game that we kind of see some of these guys kind of stumble into or trip into at times, like and as they kind of get their legs under them at the new level, right? So I think for me, just being able to come in cold, hit almost 100 yards right off the top in a big game for Georgia, so for me, I'm like them before, seeing some more news now, like them now.
Sounds good to me. And if anyone doesn't know, 2025 running back Branson Robinson from Georgia, the second or third ranked back in the class. Jake, you got more on Branson?
No, Jeff hit the nail on the head. It's a crowded Georgia backfield like always. So any production at all, I think, is a good indicator. And he performed admirably when given the chance.
Yeah, and he looks like he eats people for breakfast. Enormous man, and apparently very, very fast, verified testing. So nothing to dislike about him. So coming in at number 6 in our averaged out rankings was Kentucky wide receiver Barion Brown, also a 5-star. And who wants to lead off on Barion?
Let's hear what you've got, Eric.
Oh, I love Barion. He is one of my absolute favorite players in this class. We're going to look at a little bit of his film if we can get that far through what we got to tackle today. And the kid is electric. He just, touches the ball and hits the go button, and he is yards away from defenders. Two in this past, not this week, but week before, had 2, 60+ yard kickoff returns, not TDs, but just, making guys look foolish and create separation as a route runner, not just running out of the slot. He's running routes on the outside, a little bit of a smaller guy, but just, top tier speed and agility. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's a future NFL star, and I think he's going to destroy college football so long as they get a decent quarterback in there next year to replace Levis.
Yeah, I love Barion Brown. You mentioned the Ole Miss game. He had that huge fourth quarter catch that put them back in business to essentially win the game if they hadn't fumbled it away. I think the next play or 2 plays later, but difference maker, absolutely. Yards after the catch, monster. Wheels up for Barion Brown, and also his running mate Dane Key. Everyone said that Dane Key looked the more ready to produce right away, and I think they've both been very productive to start the season, and super encouraged for the outlook of that wide receiver room.
Jeff, you got Barion takes?
Yeah, I probably got a bit of a blind spot on him right now. I've watched Levis, but I'm focusing on Levis a little bit more, as I do build out my draft scouting notebook, and these freshman players kind of, pop where they can. So I think let's look at the film, right? Like let's go to the tape and convince me to rise them up above some of the other players we got down here.
Nice. Yeah, let's circle back to that in a few minutes. Coming in right after him, I don't think anyone's surprised about this at this point, but this didn't seem likely, preseason. Number 7 cumulative is Jaden Ott, running back from Cal. He's from Cal, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I haven't watched a Cal game yet, but man, the box store stuffing has been nice, and he looks legit. Who's watched some Ott?
Jake, you got anything on there?
So I'm the only one who had him unranked or not in the top 10. I have him at I definitely have him top 15. I don't know where exactly in there he falls. He's definitely outperformed what I thought. I like Davion more, their incumbent running back, coming in, and he's, totally stuffed him in a locker and overtaken that running back room. And, kudos to him. I think he seems very talented. I remain skeptical of any Pac-10 or Pac-12 running backs being able to get draft capital. We just don't see it happen all that often. Rashad White, I guess, being the exception. But yeah, I like Ott a lot. I don't know how much I like him for Devy, but for C2C and CFF, I think he's a stud.
Yeah, he's been running amok on Pac-12 defenses.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that they won that. So I watched that Arizona game because you can't see 275 yards and not go watch that, right? And it was a very Reggie Bush-like game, right? Like, I know we're talking Pac-12, whatever running backs, but the explosion that he had, and then his just ability to set up defenders on multiple levels, as he's even just behind the line of scrimmage. He's got a plan, and he's got the tools to execute it. So it's just, I put him pretty high in my rankings because, I see a guy with the tools. I see a guy who's kind of pieced it together already. And I think he's just going to have some electric big games. Where that goes to draft capital, that's a journey that all of these guys are going to be on, and there's a long time to get there. So, we'll see about that. But for now, I don't think I've seen a Pac-12 running back this exciting since Reggie Bush, basically. So that's why I have him high, is because he's the next one out of there that's going to actually play on an NFL field and wow some people.
Well, it's exciting.
High praise, yeah.
It's a strong endorsement. I'm gonna go watch some Cal games, I think.
Right.
You gotta watch that one versus Arizona. That he's the only reason they won that game. It was impressive, man.
So Tet McMillan, Tetaroya McMillan, is that the correct pronunciation?
Tetaroa? It's something like that.
Yeah, I probably should figure this stuff out before we put it on film. But he's been electric so far this year. I'm only caught a few glimpses, but alpha size, immediately productive as a freshman, and not even the wide receiver one there, which is saying a lot about Arizona, right? Man, what a difference from last year. But you guys done any scouting on McMillan yet?
I think he looks great. I think that whole Arizona offense looks, rejuvenated. Between Singer, Coing, and McMillan there, that's a hell of a trio. And McMillan has 349 receiving yards so far. I think last year we only saw one freshman receiver hit 500 yards on the year, and that was Worthy. This year we've got probably about 8 or 9, I think, that could end up hitting that. So that's exciting. But McMillan's second of the group. He's got the second most receiving yards of a true freshman so far. He's looked great.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear relative to the context of the production profile. I don't think he's. It's great that he's out there and making plays as a freshman. Like I said, you got to once you start seeing it, that's new information. You kind of keep going. I've watched enough because I'm scouting Cowing a lot, and and Dorian Singer kind of jumps off the page too, but McMillan is out there. He's making a couple big plays each game. So it's something that you absolutely love to see. And man, I don't know who they've got coming in behind Jaden DeLaura, but that's an awful quarterback. he DeLaura really just he makes those plays that just grind my gears, I guess. And and so to be able to produce when these guys are producing with DeLaura behind center, I think that actually says something, right?
I haven't watched him. Is DeLaura that bad, you think?
It's when they make quarterbacks just make those mind-numbingly frustrating mistakes,
poor decisions,
head scratchers.
Yeah, it's Bo Nix at Ole Miss, or Jaden Daniels right at LSU, right? It's just oh my god,
Jaden is unwatchable. Man,
that's kind of there's some flash plays right? But that's why I say, like, when everybody's kind of like propping a guy up because of like one or two flash plays, you can go watch Jaden DeLaura, like his highlight. He'll have a couple flash plays, but then you just watch his tape, right? Watch a game, and then you're like, oh no, that guy's not getting drafted.
Yeah. Some nice numbers. It's a couple weeks old on Tet, but almost a 20% weighted dominator already. And if he has a big game, he might get over that threshold this year. So still could hit that breakout threshold for the technical definition this year if he keeps it up. And then this is kind of where we like started to diverge a lot more, like towards the end of it. We were kind of all over the map, but we all either liked or didn't rank Jamarian Miller, freshman running back from Alabama. I mean, for me, we've only seen him on limited work this year, and it's been late with opposing defenses beat up, but he has looked awesome when he touches the ball. And he's getting the ball ahead of other people in that backfield. So you guys got takes on Miller?
This is where like priors come in, right? Like Jake says, like can't move people too much. I don't think there's anybody I think making like massive cases to start taking you off like what had you excited to begin with, right? And it's not just me, but like Alabama likes this guy too. So I think Hootie kind of somebody transferred out of Alabama, I think, after he came in too. I can't
Wheaton.
Kamar Wheaton, right? So we'll see how it goes, but like right now, a lot of these names here are basic, for me, like based on like priors now, because like we're waiting to see, but there's promise.
Right. Jake, you got anything?
No, Jeff, not on Miller. I'm happy to touch on some of the remaining guys I had on my rankings. Dane Key, who I mentioned before, he's been productive. He's 6'3", got NFL size. He's absolutely looked great. Javonte Barnes, people were low on him despite him being the 10th ranked composite running back in the class. He's looked the part. He's had, he's already had a 100-yard game for Oklahoma. He's looked, in my opinion, like the best running back that they have, better than Gray and Majors. And I absolutely am excited about his future. And then I had at 8, Jane McGowan, the Vanderbilt wide receiver. He leads all freshmen in receiving yards so far, with 378. The big concern for me is his average depth of target is only 3 yards according to PFF. So that's a lot of after the catch stuff and getting schemed around the line of scrimmage. But still impressive that he's been able to amass so many yards with getting the ball so close to the line of scrimmage. He is a smaller guy, 5'8", 177, but we've seen these profiles work out before, and I'm excited to see him kind of come out of nowhere and at very least be a CFF force for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in on McGowan too. I don't know if anyone saw the chart I just had up, but him and Dane Key were as of so it's like after week 4. The leaders in yards per route run and near the top for a half dozen other metrics that we care about for wide receivers. So yeah, very excited about both of those young men. I guess we can just skip through the rest of it pretty quickly, but I think Kobe Prentice, you're a freshman wide receiver. You're getting on the field ahead of other 4- and 5-star guys at Alabama, making plays. He hasn't broken out this year, but you're getting on the field and you're producing. I'm excited about your future. I don't know, Jeff, you want to take over some of the last guys you had at the tail end?
No, I mean, I think, like, again, these are like quarterbacks. I think, there's so much that can go on
just don't know yet
in their evolutions. Right. But again, it's like I said, it's sort of the promise of, the promise of priors, right. For, Alar and Klubnik, guys that were looking forward to their progression, but that's kind of it right now, is we're looking forward to their progression, and those are up there because, I think a lot of people played like super flex leagues or whatever it is. Right. And I'm always looking to kind of take a shot there. But, I feel much more certain about my love for these running backs and wide receivers that we've actually like seen on the field playing well.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at as well. We just know more about the skill positions right now than we do about the other guys. So I thought it'd be cool to throw on some film and take a look together. And what we had on the docket was to look at a little bit of Will Levis, and then maybe a couple of the wide receivers from Kentucky. I got some sharp what's his name? Chris Rodriguez tape too. But I'm definitely a little more interested in the wide receivers than I am in him. And
that's too bad because Chris Rodriguez.
So how are you guys feeling about Will?
I love C-Rod.
You like Rodriguez?
I know. Oh yeah, man. He's I think he's sneaky. I think he's
in this game.
He's got some skills, man. I think so. I mean, I'm not read, like, I don't even know if he'll make a top 10 back in this class, but I like him, man. I think he's got some nuance to his game.
I see him as day 3 priority type guy, but like in the NFL, like top runner, man. There's some plays, passing plays. There's some plays in this game he was just dragging guys like yards, So Levis, are you guys in? Are you guys out? Like, what do you guys think about the film on Levis? Have you scouted him seriously?
I'll defer to Jeff on this one.
Okay, yeah, no. I mean, when you hear the buzz for like number 1 overall, I'm not there. I just, it's I don't know. It's he's got a profile that I think some NFL teams are still looking for. But one thing that we've said, like on the Saturday to Sunday show a bunch, was like, you can't watch the playoff game between Kansas City and Buffalo and think like, oh, I want, Mac Jones, right? Like you can't like you need a guy who's going to like take over a game, right? And who has all the tools and weapons to be able to do that. And I think Levis has more, I think, NFL skills, but a lower ceiling than I think some of the other, like the Strouds and the Bryce Youngs, just because, I think the game's changing from this sort of stationary pocket, and you have to be able to play from the pocket, like to be an NFL quarterback. You can't just, run around playing college ball all the time. Like you have to be able to know how to navigate that. And so Levis does that well. And man, his deep ball is just gorgeous, right? Like pinpoint. So that's pretty cool and all. And so I can see like how you want to jump in, Eric.
I was going to say, I mean, one of the things that impresses me about him is how much he's improved from last year. And I do like seeing development in guys. Last year, I was not a big fan of his game. Like there would be the sporadic, beautiful deep balls, right? And that's when everyone said, oh, this guy's got an NFL arm, yada, yada. And then you'd watch him just spray the ball like for plays later and make, just horrible decisions. And he's cleaned up a lot of that on his tape, not in this game, but in the other one I have up here. Let me throw that on. Here you go. He made some really nice plays against pressure. And it's not, it's a G5 team, but they got a lot of pressure. Like they were in the backfield, they were headhunting for him. And, had a couple of those, nice, just like, I'm going to see the outlet pass. I'm going to hit the hot route. Nice touch pass, get out of trouble. And he had less of that against Ole Miss. I don't know if that's, he was getting flustered or what, but against Ole Miss, he had opportunities to do those same things, right? Like, feeling pressure from behind me. And I saw him, pump fake it instead of throwing the hot route, miss the second read that was, that was open, for a short pass. Still a lot of really nice plays by him in that game, but a little shakier, but I do think he's settled down. He's not just trying to run every time or hit the deep route. Like he's working the intermediate field and some decent touch on his passes. I think he's got a lot to work on with decision making and processing still. But I mean, like I said, I like seeing when a guy's improved. There's your boy Dane. Oh no, that wound up going to Tavion, but Dane was on that route. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think he's an NFL quarterback, but is he going to be successful? I think he's one of those guys that I think he's got a good shot. I think he's got the tools, and I kind of hope that he goes somewhere that he's not going to get mangled week one, right? Like I hope he goes somewhere and learns with a competent staff behind a veteran and really gets the chance to develop the rest of the skill set that he needs to be successful.
Yeah, that play you just showed was like
that
a perfect
pick was terrible.
I know. I was going to say that play, that
horrible.
Pick. Go back to that play.
Was that a miscommunication? You think he thought that someone was supposed to be there?
He thought he was running the other route for sure. That's this play, right?
Yeah. Let's see if you. I can't remember where it goes back, but like I was going to say, this is like a perfect microcosm of like. I was like, oh man, he looks like an NFL quarterback, right? Just like the way that he's runs the pocket, the way that he's in there. And then,
right.
I'm watching that play. I'm watching him in the pocket. I'm like, yeah, he slides around. He moves his base well. He's got pretty level. And then just boom, behind the receiver, right into the DB.
Yeah.
You're just like, you're missing.
I know
like you're missing recognition
there.
Places, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That man. There's Barion.
Even there, Brown's so open. Yeah, it was a good throw, but I would think most quarterbacks would be able to hit him there.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing I don't love, and for a mobile guy,
I think this is the pick.
Put on, we were talking about JJ McCarthy earlier. Put on JJ McCarthy's tape with him as a sophomore and compare his pocket presence and his pocket feel to Will Levis's. And 20-year-old or 21-year-old JJ McCarthy has more pocket feel right now than Levis. Levis gets hit from behind a couple of times in this. There's that, the horrible strip fumble at the end of the Ole Miss game, right? Like, and that was, you would have had to have been a very savvy quarterback to have avoided that. But that's not an isolated incident on his film, in my opinion. Definitely needs to develop that like second sense or that feel that the really good quarterbacks have.
Yeah, we just saw another almost near pick that was just ball placement, right? Like it was ball placement for his receiver where the defender's able to make a play there.
And they also scored 10 points last week against South Carolina.
Oh, I think Levis was out that game.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
I think he went out hurt or something the week before, and then he missed that game.
Thank you.
That was a pretty ball.
That is pretty.
He drops it, but that was a nice ball.
I mean, that's his strength right there. And like, he's going to wow during a pro day. Like he will 100% sell some team on taking him in the first round on his pro day.
It's a QB hungry league right now too. I definitely expect him to go in the first. I don't know. I'm with Jeff, not first overall. I would even be, if he goes top 10, I think that whoever takes him is going to be ridiculed like the Giants were for taking Danny Dimes there. But I do think he goes in the first round.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And like, if Kenny Pickett can be a first round pick, I think Will Levis can be a first round pick.
Yeah, I think he's at least as good of a prospect as Pickett was. So I know you guys are kind of running short on time. I want to get to waivers, so maybe we'll cut Tavion and just look at Barion Brown real quick here. And this is,
this is where Jeff, you guys got to sell me, man. Yeah, sell me that. Let's see it.
But hopefully this tape will sell you because
it sells itself.
He just, he gets missed, but he was wide open, yards open. This is Ole Miss. Like these corners have played really well this year. Great defense. Looks like I got some other stuff mixed in here, but
was he blocking there?
I don't know. Sometimes I fuck up big. I'm sorry. Once in a while, you'll catch the running play and the quarterback cutouts.
The acceleration there is nice.
Yeah, he's just the turn. That like change direction on a dime. If it cuts quick, he wasn't getting the ball. The change on a dime at full speed ability is, man, that's what I love to see. And you can definitely see that. I think on this play, just, full speed, like 90-degree turn.
Stops.
Yeah.
Not this one. Not this one. It was the other return.
Yeah. If you're a player playing dynamic returns, then, I think like that always bodes well. Usually those players are the ones who have skills. Yeah. Go back. Do it again. Let me see it.
It's a horrible Will Levis pass. This is the bad Will Levis. I need to go back further. I think it's this play. Yeah, like this is what was happening here. I mean, Barion's not open, but then what does Levis do with the ball here?
Misses him behind where there's two defenders.
Fly. You'd like to see him come down with that, but just left in this. This is almost done.
Is this the big catch?
No, I didn't get the ball on that one. I get the other one too. You guys want to watch the other one, or I got the game of Northern Illinois from him too, I think.
Sure. That's the one where he had the big touchdown, right?
Oh, sorry. Nope. Videos. Levis. No, that looks like the only Barion Brown I have. So, I don't know. Is that anything instructive in that film, Jeff? Or can you not see what was going on that much?
It was a little bit hard because I think we got a little lag and some chop in there when we did the streaming. But, obviously that I've got the link. I'll go back. I think one of the obviously just the tools that you see on the returns, show a dynamic set. If you're with wide receivers, you've got to kind of get some hands on all 22 typically, right? Like otherwise it's just you're trying to interpret like what's missing behind the scenes, and you can kind of do that here and there, but I find that like that's one of the hardest things for wide receivers, unless like you've got like a good broadcast angle or you just got like the right play, or replays sometimes do it. But with replays, you're typically seeing highlights, right? Yeah. And I like to like understand how they work, rep to rep.
Big picture,
not seeing the 60% of the plays they didn't get the ball. All right, guys. We can look at Rodriguez if you want, but I know you guys got to get going too. So let's do waivers. Jake, you got a bunch. I know Jeff. Just for if anyone's watching this, Jake and I are heavy C2C users. Jeff is a Devy guy, so Jeff's got some Devy names for you. But
why don't we just start with mine, because that'll be like everyone's going to be like, what league is he on waivers? But yeah, like you guys mentioned, I'm more Devy, right? And so like even then, like we're not going through waivers throughout like the college football season to get them on our squads, right? Like you gotta get these guys during your Devy draft and only then. Typically like the younger you go, the more odds you are to get them, but the more risk they are to like break out. But I thought, Dallin Hayden, right? Jumping in for OSU, like he's probably already in most of your leagues. But from the Devy radar, like I think he's pretty new, and one to kind of keep those eyes on.
Yeah, I mean he's we had him dead and buried. A lot of people did before the season. Who's going to transfer? Someone has to transfer. Is it going to be him? Right? But who got hurt that opened it up for him? Someone got hurt to start the season, right?
Mion got hurt.
Williams didn't play last week,
right? And that's why Dallin's been able to get on the field. And then I thought they had someone else. No, there was the other kid from last year. The running back they recruited last year got hurt at the beginning of the season. We can come back to it. Evan something. We'll circle back to it.
Sounds right.
I can look it up. I just can't remember the name off the dome. So you got a lot.
Evan Pryor.
You got Evan Pryor. That's it. Yeah. So hey, Jake's got a lot of waiver names for us.
I think it's only 5. Those are just like some notes on there.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So why don't you fire them off? And this is a lot of like what Jake and I play, C2C leagues, weekly waivers. Some of these guys are maybe going to be not as applicable to the leagues that have like 2 times a year or something. But if you've got deep, or if you're in college fantasy football league with waivers, these are names you want to know. And these are guys you want because these are going to be productive CFB assets. So Jake, shoot.
The first one for me is Sam Wiglis. He was a walk-on for Ohio State. This spring, he transferred to the University of Ohio. He had caught all 7 of his targets for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns against Akron. That's his 4th game already out of 7 with over 22 points. He looks every bit like their wide receiver 1, and I think he's going to be productive from here on out. My second name is Charles McClelland for Cincinnati. He had 179 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns versus USF. That's his 2nd game over 25 points so far this season, and he seems to have taken control of the Cincinnati backfield, not Corey Kiner like everyone had kind of hoped would be. Zion Bones of Hawaii. It's his first game back since getting hurt early in week 1. Hawaii's offenses look terrible, but he, in his first game back, had 9 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown. It's every bit the volume that we'd hoped coming into the season. You should definitely check and see if any impatient owners dropped him. I know that I dropped him in quite a few spots, trying to cycle in actual people who are performing. Well, it looks like he is going to be a performer, so go and pick him back up. I'm also keeping tabs on Trayshawn Harrison, the ex-Seminole playing back out west at Oregon State. He had 7 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown versus Stanford. He had a crazy run after the catch for 50 yards for a touchdown in that game. That's his 2nd 25-plus point game, his 4th game over 8 targets, and his 2nd game so far over 100 yards. And for anyone who's in a really deep league looking for some running back help, Lexington Joseph for Florida International has had back-to-back 20-point games and seems like the running back to own there.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. That is a lot. And, we'll try to post some of this in the chat. So if people are trying to catch up to this, but you're interested in the material, we'll get you the information, or, DM me or Jake, and we're happy to help you with waivers at any point in time, unless you're in leagues with us, and then you're Ben.
Then we help on Wednesdays.
Yeah, exactly. After Jake and I have our weekly duel for the players we like. So I'm in some mid-sized C2C leagues, and I know last week I found Max Dugan on waivers in 2. If you guys haven't kept up with TCU, even before this blowout with Quentin Johnson, Dugan has been profitable to start in Campus to Canton since he took over the starting job from whatever it was, the transfer they had at the beginning of the season. And not just getting it done with his legs, which has been Dugan in previous years. He's been throwing the ball. I haven't watched the film, but the completion percentages are decent. The yards per attempt is decent, and he's productive. And the second guy I have that I've probably got in any league I'm in, but I found it a lot, was Dominic Lovett. No one's been talking about Lovett until the past couple of weeks, but he has elite secondary metrics, yards per route run, been over 3, tons of other. And like we were talking about Luther Burden, we all still have a great opinion of Luther Burden. Lovett is playing ahead of Burden. Probably Burden's taking some coverage off him, but the man is producing in the SEC, including against good competition. He had a great game against Georgia a couple weeks ago. So my CFB guys, and this one Jake and I both tried to throw out here, so I'll read his notes. Tip of the hat for him. Kamari DK? You think it's Kamari, Jake?
I thought it was Shamir.
Shamir. So Shamir DK or Dyke, right? But second game in a row over 100 yards, back-to-back games with 10 targets for 10, 185, and 3 versus Northwestern. Highly productive wide receiver. I got a couple other guys. Devontae Walker, wide receiver from Kent State. This was another Jake stat, but the last week over 32 out of 40 passes. So, what's that? 75% of the whole passing game went to either Walker or Cephas, Dante Cephas, right? Who's owned already. And then I'm going to mangle this name, but Sear Bangura, it's a running back for Ohio. This is probably a deeper play, but he's got 2 games in a row over 90 yards. We're in conference play. He's got some good matchups coming up. 3 TDs in one TD in the other. And then he might be owned if it's a more competitive league. But CJ Beasley from Coastal is still on waivers in some of my leagues. Second 100-yard game in a row, 5 touchdowns on the season. I mean, that's a good offense, and you want the running back in it. And then I get a list from one of the most recent leagues that Jake and I co-own on of all of the waivers that are in. So if you're in a league that has that 1 or 2 times a year waiver format, I'm going to post some names in the chat, and I'll throw this up on Twitter as well, so you guys can get a sense of the most desirable waiver ads if it's a format that these guys are still out there and owned. So I can't thank you guys enough for coming on today. This has been a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys had a good time too. And I hope anyone that's out there listening and watching, got some good information and had some fun with us. But you guys got any final thoughts? Anything else you want to talk about from week 6, Devy football, Sunday? What do you guys got?
I had a question for Jeff. I believe you're an IDP guy also, right? Do you have a top defensive player freshman that we should be keeping tabs on?
Yeah, for the IDP side, I'm pretty much on the NFL side. Otherwise, I just don't think I have enough brain cells to keep track of them all. Yeah. The IDP side hasn't extended down to the college angle. I keep a couple eyes on the names for the incoming class, but honestly, here's a cheat code for IDP is just who's going to get snaps, right? Like that's snaps equal points. It's all about opportunities, right? So that's kind of like my cheat sheet for how I do IDP well.
Awesome. All I'm hearing is that we need an IDP C2C league with the 3 of us.
I tried to set something up in the offseason. It wasn't full CDC though, but it was like a 53-man roster, start 11 each side, full Devy league. That's awesome. I couldn't get enough people chaotic enough to try to join me in the fray on that.
Wow. You got 2 of the biggest degenerates in fantasy football right here. So
we're in.
Add a couple to your roster sheet if you want. Any final words on this week, Jeff, or comments here?
Well, I mean, I look at your list you were talking about, but whoever got Kenny McIntosh got a great player off of waivers. That's kind of silly.
That was us. That's our
Nice. Yeah, and him and Jalen Daniels too. Yeah,
probably another like Dave, like 3rd or 4th round guy, right? Just because it's such a loaded class. But man,
I mean, he's better
than James Cook, right?
Like right now, maybe. I haven't seen a lot from James Cook. I like James Cook a lot, but yeah, I mean, like when it's kind of died off a little bit. We haven't seen as much in like recent weeks, but like the way he started off the season was like 10 catches and like 100 yards and as a receiver, right? And so like that's what we were kind of going in theorizing, like Paul and myself on Saturday to Sunday, was that that's the role that we thought he'd step into, and I was somewhat skeptical because I was saying like, hey, like not everyone can just be the next James Cook or whoever's shoes you're trying to fill, right? And he pretty much stepped in and did that pretty well. So yeah, maybe just like one more plug for my podcast, because you'd have gotten Kenny McIntosh on waivers week 2 if you listened there.
Yeah. So what's it? Saturday to Sundays. That's the podcast.
Yep.
We'll
Saturday to Sunday.
That in the street here too. Jake, any other work you want to plug right now?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on, Jeff. It was a pleasure talking to you and getting to meet you. Eric, a pleasure as well. And thanks anyone who took the time to listen today.
All right, everybody, enjoy the football. There's some good games on tonight, and we'll see you next time. If I can figure out how to terminate the broadcast.
All right, buddy. Well, I'm going to jump